Hello beautiful friends, it's Belinda. Today I am here to share another project for the Cut to You design team. If you have watched any of my previous videos, you may notice that this intro is a little bit backwards. I don't usually start with my finished layout. The reason that you're seeing this today is that I'm actually coming back to re-record my intro. I've had some thoughts bubbling away in my mind and I wanted to just update a few of the things that I introduced. So today, for something different, we are starting with this completed layout. I have used two of the gorgeous Cut to You cut files on this layout. I've used the leaf cluster to create a foiled background. Now I know that the camera is not going to pick up that shimmer there, but I used the foil quill with my silhouette cameo to create that beautiful foiled background. And if this is something that you're interested in seeing me create or learning how to do, I am going to be starting a new series on my channel shortly, which is going to be all about providing you with tips and tutorials for some of the things that I do. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and do that now so that you can stay in the loop when I do launch that new series. So as I said, this beautiful background piece here is the leaf cluster cut file, which I have added to my background using my foil quill and my silhouette cameo. And then the title I have created using one of the titles from the hashtags heart this cut file, and it just says hashtag all the heart eyes. And I have popped out the inside pieces there. And so that's it. For this layout, I used a Uniquely Creative kit. It is the True North collection kit, which is stunning. And I loved bringing everything together for this layout. So with that, let's hop on fast forward and see it all come together. Okay, so I'm starting off by trimming down my background piece. Now this is a really beautiful thick piece of watercolor cardstock, which is actually from Uniquely Creative. I do subscribe to their kits. It is really lusciously thick and sturdy, and it provided a really good base for doing that foiling on. It's got a nice embossed texture to it. So I've just trimmed a little bit down because I am planning on adding a mat to this entire layout. And what I'm doing now is I'm just placing down my photo and my title, and I'm lightly drawing with pencil around the inside of that cut file because of course I'm going to add some mixed media to help that cut file stand out. It's just going to be really light watercolor wash using a minty green and a really soft blue. And so what I'm doing here is I'm grabbing some of the pigment from the palette that's on the left there, and I'm popping it into the little dish, and then I'm going to add just some drops of water just to really wash it out because I didn't want anything too dark. And then not putting too much thought into how I'm doing this, I'm just adding some color in a few different places. Because this is watercolor cardstock, I didn't actually need to go and gesso the page. The watercolor, the water, as you can see, sits really nicely on top of it, and I do have the ability to move it around quite a bit before it dries and soaks in. So in hindsight, my pencil marks were a little bit too dark because on the finished layout, and I don't think you're going to see it in the video, but on the finished layout, you can slightly see some of those pencil marks because I ended up shifting my title over just a smidge. But it's not noticeable enough to cause a problem, so I'm fine with that. And now I'm coming in with the blue, and as you can see, I'm just making sure that I've got some balance there, some little blue patches and some little green patches. And I take this away off camera and dry it off with a heat tool. And when I do that, you may see that the colors kind of blend together a little bit, so there's no real definite line between the blues and the greens, and it looks really pretty. I'm really happy with how it looks. Quickly whip that away, and here is my backing piece. It's a dark navy star, and of course, as always, I don't want to waste any of that paper, so I'm using my trimmer to just trim out the center. I usually leave a border of about 1 inch around each piece, and then I'm going to bring that white cardstock back And I've kind of changed my process a little bit for how I layer my mats down, and that's the reason why I've left this into this video. I used to add tape, but I was finding that I was pulling it up and messing around a lot. Now I am just adding a thin line of adhesive inside, and that gives me the flexibility to just shift it around if it doesn't end up quite centered when I first put it down. But happily this time it was centered. So with that really thin line of adhesive, it's just adding enough grip there to enable me to take it across to my sewing machine, which you should see pop on in just a moment. There it is. And I'm going to add a line of stitching around the edge of the border, or around the border. And now let's do some work on the photo. So the photo that I'm scrapping is this really sweet little moment that I captured of my husband and my son. And as you can see, that happened in January 2020. And of course, as always, I am using some plain white cardstock. This is just the offcuts from when I cut out the title to add a white border or a white mat to my photo. This paper trimmer is new to me, and I trimmed a little bit too much off the edge there, so I'm not sure if I kept this on camera. Looks like I'm doing it off camera. What I'm doing here is I'm just tearing the photo back up off that white backing piece and recentering it, and then just trimming it off a little bit. I also find it really hard to use these guillotine paper trimmers when I'm filming, because I kind of have to get my head over the top to see what I'm doing, and doing that of course means that you see the back of my head. So I've gone through the collection kit. This is the Uniquely Creative True North kit, and I have pulled out a few different pattern papers that I'm going to use to add just a few layers behind my photo. I thought I was going to use one of those cut apart sheets, but I decided to use the green stripe, which was on the A side, or the B side, on the other side. There's also this circle, almost like a pie chart pattern, and of course I'm going to use this navy star paper. What you may have noticed from watching some of my previous videos is that when I add the mat to my page, I will almost always use part of the piece that I cut out from the center to mat my photo. And for me, that just really helps to bring it together. It connects the border to what you're seeing on the page, and it's a way of keeping the eye focused onto my photos. So I will almost always reuse whatever the mat for my page is to mat my photos. And for this one, I'm adding the layers slightly off center and grabbing my distressing tool to really rough up those edges just to add a little bit more interest. And the green is going to sit just down the bottom, and it's a nice pop of color because this layer is quite soft. And it is a little bit cleaner. I wanted to create a layout this time that was just a little bit cleaner and simpler than what I have been making lately. So I want to pop this photo up off the page, but I didn't want to add too much dimension. This here is just a piece of chipboard that was inside a pack of white cardstock, just some cheap white cardstock that I get from Spotlight, and they put this thick chipboard in obviously to stop it from bending, and I find this is a really great thing to keep in my stash for this purpose, for layering up behind photos and things like that when I want to add a little bit of dimension but not too much. It's just enough. So now I'm layering this cut file, this title down, and I am going to adhere it off camera. I did record it, but all you were seeing was the back of my head. So I've cut it out and I've slowed this part of the video down just a little bit so I can talk you through how I did it. So I laid it down, I used my T-square ruler to make sure that it was nice and straight. And then I grabbed my adhesive with the fine tip applicator, and I just went a little bit at a time. I just adhered down, added a little bit of glue, and stuck down a couple of letters at a time. Because it's quite a big cut file, sorry, it's quite a large file, but the pieces are very thin. So trying to glue it all down in one go was just going to be a little bit too hard. but it is all adhered down now, and you can see that what I am doing is I had cut these pieces, these center pieces out using my Cameo from 2 different pattern papers from the kit, and I'm adding some little foam strips behind each of the letters, and then I'm just popping them in to fill in the cut file. Now this is a technique that I've seen quite a few people doing lately, and it is on trend, and it's definitely something that I wanted to try. So the idea is that instead of popping up your cut file sits flat against the page, and then the pieces that you fill on the inside you give them some dimension to lift them up off the page, and it's a really nice effect. It's something different for my scrapbook pages, so it will add some interest as you're flicking through. And then with the magic of video editing, we are all done. So I have adhered each of those down, and it's quite a subtle effect, but I think it's really effective. It's really pretty, and having all of those pieces popping off the page. Now looking at it here on camera, I think you probably can't see the white cut file all that well, but in real life you definitely can see it up against the page there. So I've now adhered my photo down, and I've got my journaling, which I have typed up on my typewriter, cut down into strips, and then I'm just adding a thin line of wet adhesive and gluing those down centered underneath my photo. And this is the Art Glitter Glue, which is my favorite adhesive. I'm on my second bottle because I broke the tip being a little bit too rough and then couldn't get it off. So I did go and buy a second bottle of this, but I also have a really large bottle in my stash, which I use to refill when I need to. So for my date, I also typed that on my typewriter, and then this little tab is from the cut apart sheet, which came in the True North collection kit from Uniquely Creative. And so I've typed that date out, trimmed it down, and then stuck it onto the tab. Now in the kit, there were a whole bunch of really thick craft tags, and I liked the size of them, but I didn't want to use the craft because it didn't really go with the colors that I was using in this layout. So I used that as a template and then trimmed down this pattern paper, and I'm going to use both sides of it, and I'm just creating my own little tags here. So I've got that white polka dot on the blue background, and then I have got the blue stripes on the white background, which is the same as the paper that I used to fill in the words in my title. And I'm just going to add a little hole in the center there using my punch. And then what I'm going to do off camera, which you're not really going to see a lot of, is I've just got some plain white twine and I'm wrapping it around the center where the hole is. This is a technique that I saw Victoria Marie doing on a layout, and I really liked it. It's a way to bring in a little bit more texture, some of that, just a different element without having the tags and the ties hanging down the page, which I didn't want this time around. So I've done that on each of those tags, and then I'm going to tuck them in behind my photo as the base for some very small clusters. So I'm going to layer up that blue one, and then I have the opposite side, which is the blue stripe on the white background, and adding some wet adhesive before I tuck it behind the photo, and then layering that up on top. And I'm going to repeat that exact same element, or those exact same elements there on the top right of my page, or top right of my photo, I should say. And that's it. That's just the 2 clusters here, because it is quite a symmetrical layout, so I didn't want to go and create a third and have it come off balance. I've got these laser woodcut stars, which I have popped out, and that little tag there says live and love, I think, and I really wanted to make it work, but it was just a little bit too big to fit into that cluster there. So I'm just going to stick with the star. I've got the star outline. See, I'm still trying to get that to work. Nope. Maybe that tag's going to work. No, that's not going to work either. I've got this little darker blue, but it's just too heavy down there. I thought about layering them up one on top of the other, And then eventually I give up on using those tags, although I think, yep, here we go. I thought, oh, maybe if I pop it up a little bit, but it was just covering up too much of the photo and too much of the star, and it was just too heavy. So it does end up going, and what I go with is using the inside piece, the solid star, and just layering it up there and then popping that tab with the date alongside. So it's really quite simple. Just a simple little cluster, because of course those gold foiled leaves on the background really are the standout feature of this layout, and they draw your eye straight into that gorgeous photo. So I'm just tucking that tab in there with the date, and then I'll get to work on this cluster on the right hand side as well. And once again, I'm planning on just putting one of those laser cut stars, using a smaller one this time, and then layering up the inside piece. I toyed with the idea of bringing that little label in just to balance out the same green that was on the left, but I didn't go ahead with that. I just left it as it was, and I think it's totally fine. And then to finish off my layout, I'm going to come in with some Nuvo drops, of course. I am a little bit obsessed with these at the moment, which you will probably know if you've watched any of my recent videos. This time I have chosen two colors. I've got a dark blue. In the bottle it looks more like a royal blue, but it dries closer to a navy. And then I've also picked an aqua, which goes really well with the colors in my patterned papers. Just scattering those around, making sure that everything's nice and balanced. And then I do create a couple of little dots in the top right corner of the page and the top left corner and the bottom right corner of my page, just to add some movement and to keep the eye moving around. And that is it. I do hope you've enjoyed watching this process and how this layout came together. Of course, I've got all of the details for the cut files that I used in the description box below. I would really appreciate any comments that you can leave, and if you give this video a like, it does help me to grow my channel. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.